you for coming to my speech today. This was a subject that we've been talking about quite some time as teachers, and it's addressing the correlation between speech delays and screen time. Something that, again, when we think about speech, speech has what we call a window of opportunity develop, and that was a phrase coined by Maria Montessori, what she decided, or what she called sensitive periods. And that's when a child is most prone or receptive to learning speech. Not that you can't learn speech outside that window of opportunity, it just becomes a little more increasingly difficult to do so. So what my speech is going to do, I will provide objective information to share with parents and providers as to why we should restrict or limit screen time for toddlers and babies. That includes screen times on media as well as TV, and how it's not conducive to children developing their speech. We're going to look at other issues. Do social and economic situations also provide a variable, or exactly what are some things as providers we can do to facilitate speech and encourage children to speak. So when we look at the screen, there was a time where providers didn't realize that babies actually hear and listen while they're in utero. So this screen shows that even at 9 weeks, as their ears begin to develop, babies can decipher sounds and voices, especially those of their native tongue. At 16 weeks, certain sounds are detectable, and by 24 weeks, babies begin to turn their heads towards sound. They begin to recognize mom's voice, dad's voice, and familiar tunes. When I think about this, it shows the importance of speech. Have you ever lost something before and someone may have told you, well, go back and trace your steps? So when we think about speech and relevance to tracing our steps, the more a baby hears speech, the more a baby interacts, it's laying neural pathways, or every time that baby hears that sound or that voice, it becomes more and more familiar with them. And while they can't speak or express themselves, it encourages their receptive communication. And scientists have noted that while babies don't have the ability to speak, they have upwards, or they're familiar with upwards of 100 or so words, even at birth. So what the picture again is stating about neural pathways, how we can set opportunities, even at a rudimentary level, how babies are able to understand speech. They can learn and respond through facial expressions. When they cry, we're letting them know that communication is important and how their needs are going to be met. That also makes them feel safe and secure. They understand tones, facial expressions, gestures, and one of the first things that babies do that they develop is recognizing mom's face. That's the closest distance, and that's why when we are talking with them, that we should look at them and hold them. That makes them feel safe and secure. As providers, what are some things we can do when we find the research that documents that screen time is not conducive to speech development? Some parents will even say, oh, well, it's educational, but it doesn't allow for that give and take response where a child may not have that understanding. Especially scientists have shown that children, they're just looking at the screen, they really don't know what's going on. So it's important to be able to speak to them. So that old adage that it has a value or it's educational value, that's not necessarily the case. So in conclusion, how do we as providers bridge that gap? We do so by providing resources. When we go into the communities, we have workshops that are relevant to the parents we work with. Communicate with parents. A lot of times when we have home visits and parents come into the classroom, they even ask us for a suggestion. Well, I don't know how to get my baby or my infant or my toddler to put down the tablet or put down the media. So sharing those resources, and one thing that I discovered was even on my smartphone, under settings, there's something that says screen time. And what that does is that sets a limit. You can actually set an internal limit within your devices. It also lets you know how long a child has been on that media, because a lot of times parents underreport how much their child is actually spending on a computer. It's also a collaborative approach when we share information as providers. Maybe something that works with your parents, I can share with my parents, and vice versa when we go to workshops and conferences. And then last, as providers, always advocate for parents to read to their children, to talk to their children. Go with them to get library cards. That's very important. to turn the screen off at various times during the day. And so, again, we can begin the discussion amongst ourselves, again, and sharing resources with our parents to help them understand that the best way for children to learn language and communication is by interacting with us.